DJ PK, and we are joined by Sam Farnsworth, who was packing bags but has paused for a minute to talk to us. Sam, good morning.
What's up, guys? Good morning.
The Milan Olympics are up, and you are headed to Italy for about a month. Now, on the surface, that sounds awesome, but there's probably lots of stuff we don't know. So, the best thing about going to Italy for a month and the worst thing about going to Italy for a month, please explain.
Oh, man. Well, I guess the best thing is I've never been before, so that, it's always cool and unique to travel somewhere you've never been before, to see new things, to experience new foods and a little bit of new culture, even though you're kind of in that Olympic bubble. I really enjoy that aspect of it. The worst thing by far is, and maybe you guys have heard the stories from others before, but the sleep we get or don't get out there, that part's tricky. I feel like because I went to France a year and a half ago, I feel like maybe it's still sort of fresh and I kind of know the routine that's in the same time zone. But basically when I was in France, I slept in 2 shifts. I had about a 2-hour shift and then about a 4-hour shift. Those were my sleeping times. The first week was terrible. I thought I might not wake up. I thought maybe my heart will stop or something, and I'm not going to end up getting out of France. But after that first week, I really got into it, and I got used to it. So I'm hoping I get into it again, get used to it again pretty quickly, because that part is the adjustment part's pretty brutal.
You and I had a discussion at a football game about the Olympics and what you'd be covering, and you said that it would be different in this time because it is far more spread out. Explain how that is going to work for you and your coverage for KSL.
It's crazy. So, I mean, you think about how spoiled we are here in Utah, even to another extent. I'll just, even not from an Olympic standpoint, from a skiing standpoint, those of us who love the slopes, who like to ski or snowboard or whatever, you think of how many resorts you are within, an hour or less to all across the Wasatch Front, right? When I lived in Colorado, the closest resort to me living on the Front Range of Colorado was still 2 hours away, and then you had to fight traffic. So it's even that aspect of it. But from an Olympic standpoint now, all of the venues that are here in Utah, again, an hour and a half maybe from Salt Lake to get to almost every single venue, and at the most. And in Milan, there's a reason why it's Milan-Cortina, right? Because Milan and Cortina really are very far apart. If I were to take a train ride, it would take me, I think, 5.5, 6 hours to get to Cortina. So our team that's going out there is actually, so myself and Deanie Wimmer and Mark Wetzel, our photographer, we are flying into Milan. Matt Gephardt and Mike Anderson are actually taking a separate flight and to get to Cortina. So, it's crazy how far apart they are. And then even on top of that, a part of my Olympic coverage, about a week in to Milan, I'll be getting on a train and going about a 4-hour train ride to the north up to the mountains to watch some of our free skiers. So it is way spread apart. And it will have its challenges with our coverage, but as a result, I'm really curious to see how they celebrate the Olympians. Do they bring them all back to Milan from wherever they were at when they get their medals? Do they celebrate them at the venues they're at? So there's going to be a lot of new and interesting aspects to these games.
You have to do a lot of interviews before you go so that you can advance whatever the competition is, in the next 24 hours. How much of the games do you get to see there, and how much do you do based on the competition there, and how much are you just constantly doing live shots and advancing whatever the next thing is?
Yeah, especially the advancing part, right? Just working on that next story, that next interview, and things like that, and the content, gathering the content actually prohibits us from being able to watch a lot of competition. So whatever event I choose, I'm just basing this off of my experience in France, but whatever event I choose, that's kind of the event I'm at for the day. And so if I'm to go to, the USA hockey game on February 12th, their opening game, that might be the only event I go to the entire day, and I might not know what happened up on the slopes with our local skiers, or vice versa. If I go up to the slopes for some of these freestyle skiers and I'm following them, I might not know what happened in speed skating or whatever until I catch up online, just like the rest of us, right? that part is a little bit challenging, and a lot of it has to do with, for the most part, we're all doing the one-man band thing. We call that in our industry one-man band, like where I'm taking my own camera, lights, microphones. I got to run it all myself, which is, actually part of the job I enjoy. But as a result, you're so focused and entrenched in what that one story is you're working on today that sometimes you're not always up to date with everything else. I try my best to follow everything as we're going along and make sure I know where our local athletes are. But that is one of the challenges that you bring up there, DJ.
You mentioned the folks that will be going with you, and we know you as a sports person, but we know the others that you named as news people. How will they be covering it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the one thing, I guess the one thing we all have in common is we're all storytellers in our own right? Just like you guys are both as well. We all have different ways of telling stories and relaying information. So we all have that commonality. So even though I might know a little more about the athletes themselves because I've covered them and followed them throughout their careers, throughout my career as a sports journalist, right? And maybe they're not quite as in tune with that. Those guys are still great at gathering the information and finding out what the story is behind an athlete or behind, the culture. Mike Anderson's going to do like a lot of cultural pieces too, and kind of relate how does Cortina relate to maybe Park City and the mountains we have here, things like that. So they all have their own unique ways and different ways of storytelling. Mine will be a lot more focused on the athletes and the scores, right, to games similar to what you might see on a sportscast here. But at the same time, I'll be getting access to those athletes, and, knock on wood, that the way it works at the Olympics is every athlete is required to walk through a mixed zone for the media to talk to. So, I'm going to be hunting down all of our local guys as best I can to bring those interviews as well. But yeah, I mean, even though my focus is more sports related, each one of them will have a very unique way of telling the story of the Olympic Games. And I think it'll reach all of our viewers back here in Utah.
The mixed zone, that is such an international sports thing, right? It's very common in internet, but it's not what we're used to here. So explain to people how you have to stand behind a barrier and yell at people who may or may not be able to see you when they turn their head because other people might be walking by.
No, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think the closest thing, if you've ever been media at a golf PGA tournament event, they have something similar, but it's still not quite the same. Mixed zone in the Olympics is, it basically as they leave the playing surface, the competition arena or the slopes or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of like a roped up, almost like a queue that when you're waiting in line for a ride at Disneyland or at Lagoon, that kind of, they have to walk through the queue. It kind of winds back and forth where you've got print and print journalists in one section, radio or podcasting journalists in another section, and then the TV journalists at the end. They have to walk past all of them. They're not required, I guess, to stop. So yeah, it's up to the journalists to be like, hey, over here, can I talk to you real quick? Clayton Keller, hey, Sam Farnsworth, KSL Salt Lake City. Can you just stop for a minute? So you got to get their attention. You got to get their attention. And you mentioned earlier, DJ, about doing some of these interviews before we leave. A big strategy of mine and reason why I do these interviews before I leave is to develop a little more of that face-to-face recognition and to let them know, hey, I was at Mammoth practice 2 weeks ago, and I was like, hey, Clayton, just so you know, I'm going to be out there. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. You're probably going to get sick of me. And I'm like, believe me, I will not be sick of talking to you in Milan. But to try to develop that relationship previously so that when they do walk through that mix zone, hopefully they'll remember and they'll stop and give me just 2 or 3 quick minutes.
I believe that Italy, I don't know if they have different time zones, but I believe that the basic time zone that they have is 8 hours ahead of what we are. So it's about in the 5 o'clock hour right now. With that in mind, how do you know, or do you know, how the television is going to play out for the viewership for those of us here in Utah who want to watch all this stuff on KSL?
Yeah, that's a great question. because of the media age we're in now, you can watch every event live now with the Peacock app or the NBC Sports app. So pretty much everyone can watch everything live at whatever time in the morning or night. So when most events are happening in Milan, I think that'll be mostly midday. Mid-morning, midday, early afternoon here.
Yeah.
There will be a few. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. In the primetime coverage, maybe not. Now that I'm thinking of the time zone difference, I felt like in France there were a few live things in the primetime coverage, but probably not. It's probably all going to be kind of recapped and everything. And so, I think gone are the days of spoilers. Even though people who are turning on the primetime NBC coverage of Olympic events. We just have information at the tip of our fingers now, right? We can find it so quickly that when I'm going on live at 10 p.m., even though there's going to be another wave of NBC Olympic coverage coming on after my live hit, I kind of feel like, maybe I'll throw out a warning, hey, if you really don't want to know, turn the volume down or something. But I feel like by then, if they didn't already know, if they didn't already find out, then sorry, tough luck. It's just in that age we're in now where you can find out exactly when it happens. But yeah, I think most of the live coverage will be about midday, early afternoon between NBC and their apps.
I think when it's been in Europe before, and to PK's point, though, maybe this was with a 7, 9, or 10-hour time difference, it seems like sometimes there's been live stuff actually in the late-night show that's early morning there, something like skiing where they don't want the sun on the slopes all day long. So you just got to kind of figure that out as it goes, I suppose. And if you're going to do that, then you're going to end up sleeping in shifts just like you, Sam.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Sleep in shifts at home so you can get up and watch all the events live.
So do you have to, are you live? What shows do they put you live in? This is how your sleep schedule. So you're live are you live in the 10 o'clock every day?
Usually. Yeah. And that's going to be the plan again, but it's also always kind of be ready to adjust on any given day depending on what their needs are back here.
Yeah, but that's 6 a.m. in Italy.
Right, it is.
So if they decide to adjust at 8 o'clock here at 4 a.m., well, what do they think you're doing at 4 a.m.? You're sleeping.
Oh, you don't know Sam. I'll just leave that right there.
Sam at 4 a.m. in Italy.
Yeah, so they assign us to kind of which shows we're going to be in, and I'm assigned primarily to the 10, which, yes, is 6 a.m. There was only a couple of times where they're like, hey, can you be live in the 5 or 6, which was, 2 a.m., something like that out there. And so I basically got used to going to sleep about 2 to 2:30 anyway. When I was in France, I was doing all my work up to that point. If they needed me live before then, I could do a quick live hit. Then I'd sleep for my 2 hours. I'd get up between 4 and 4:30. I'd hit my shuttle at 5, which took me to my live shot location, got me there pretty quick, and I was able to get all set up, do my live shot at 6. When I was done with that, I'd come back to the hotel, eat breakfast, and then I'd sleep for my 3.5, 4.5 hours till about 10 to 11 a.m. And then I'd get up and rinse and repeat. So I'm thinking maybe it'll be similar in Italy, but I'm also prepared to be surprised. And hopefully it's pretty smooth though.
When are the opening ceremonies?
February 5th. It's a Thursday, I believe. So, but February 5th is the opening ceremonies, and then full go from there. So
how many Olympics is this for you?
2.
So I say 2.5 because France was my first on-site. I was supposed to go to Beijing 4 years ago, and it's super unique circumstances. Obviously, we were kind of at the tail end of COVID in 2022, but obviously the communist government in China, they were very strict with how they handled COVID and things like that. And it was probably about 5 days before I was supposed to leave when KSL finally, Bonneville, they pulled the plug. They're like, it's just not safe. We're not going to do it. They had already paid for things, and they were okay with pulling the plug. I was okay with going, and I tried to let them know, hey, I'm okay. My family's okay. We're all ready for this. We've been preparing for this for months. I'm ready to go. But they just said, it's not worth the risk. Let's keep you home. But then Alex Cabrera, our Olympic legend, was able to put his foot down and say, hey, I'm going. So he ended up going. We sent one reporter to Beijing, and then I covered the Beijing games from families' watch parties and things like that out here in Park City, or at events that were at the Oval. So I still kind of covered the games-ish. I've got the credential that was sent to me. I've got all that stuff. I just never actually stepped foot in Beijing. So I'll say 2.5 Olympics.
Okay.
And they're not going to send you over coach, are they? You're going to get that to business or first class?
I wish. I have no idea. NBC's got a charter flight, and they said you don't get to choose your seat. So I just hope I'm not stuck in the middle seat.
So you're flying with like people from NBC stations all over the country?
Yeah, we'll fly from Salt Lake City tomorrow morning, and we'll land in Atlanta, and they've got a charter flight there where they're flying NBC, all the people who are working with NBC or NBC affiliates, they'll all meet there and get on that flight. At least the people going to Milan will be going there and getting on the charter flight, and we'll head to Milan. The other guys, they're flying to Venice. They have to fly to Venice, get off in Venice, get on a train or a bus there for a couple of hours to get up to Cortina.
I just hope you're not in the C boarding group.
Yeah, I just hope that there's a empty seat in between each person, right? Let's space it out a little bit. I don't know how many people are on the flight or how big the plane is.
No chance, dude. This is transatlantic. They are filling that thing up.
They're going to pack it.
Well, enjoy your peanuts.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Sam, thanks for coming on and talking Olympics with us. We appreciate it, and we'll see you while you're out there.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. There's Sam Farnsworth, anchor for KSL Sports Live, headed to the Milan Olympics. Ready to go. Tim Lacombe, jazz analyst for SCG Media, joins us next. Former BYU assistant coach. What does he think the Cougars' chances are at Kansas, where they won a year ago? Can they do it again? That's next. Stay with us.